so bring your mind back to the thought of kindness and interdependence, how our very ability to stay alive depends on the kindness of other people, the people who grow our food and make our clothes and build the buildings we live in and so on. And remember how dependent we all are on others just to stay alive, that we would find it very difficult to stay alive all by ourselves. And so being interrelated with other sentient beings, experiencing the kindness of other sentient beings, then allow your heart to open with a feeling of connection to them, a feeling of appreciation for other living beings, and a wish for them to be happy, no matter who they are or how they think or what they do, but simply because they exist and want to be happy and don't want to suffer, and because in past lives and this life they've been kind and they will be kind in the future. And then make it the purpose of our lives to repay that kindness. And we do it by practicing the path and gaining the various realizations and capabilities that come along as a product of progressing on the path, realizing the nature of reality. And so let's make that our aim in life and approach it with a lot of joy and eagerness. And think of the happiness that others will experience as we're able to be of greater benefit to them, all the way up to the benefit they'll receive when we are fully awakened. That's a good question. So this feeling of being connected with other living beings is quite important. You know, we so often feel ourselves as isolated units that are disconnected from others. And what creates that feeling of being disconnected is our self-centered thought that is spinning around me and my life and what I'm like and what I want and what I've done and what I haven't done and what I should do and what I don't want to do, and all about me. And this thought that makes such an incredible big deal about me is such a huge impediment to really opening our hearts and caring about others. And we find all different sorts of ways to put ourselves first You know, the self-grasping ego, self-grasping ignorance, and its cohort, the self-centered mind, are incredibly clever, and they find all sorts of ways to really bring it back to it's all about me. So of course one way is, you know, I want this, I want that, I don't want this, I don't want that. The kind of gimme mind, the 3-year-old mind that still stays with us when we're 30 and 60 and 90, you know. You know, that mind, I don't like that, get away from me, you're bugging me, I want my lollipop. So, you know, we of course have much, we know how to cover it now and appear to be polite and, you know, benevolent and kind to others. We know that and still get what we want, right? But we can see that we spend a lot of time in that conniving to get what we want, yeah? So that's one level of it, you know, it's kind of a very gross level that we can see, you know. I'm going to eat quickly so I can get more dessert before everybody eats it up. You know, that kind of mind. Am I telling you my secrets? Or do any of you do that too? But then there's other ways in which we kind of stay stuck in ourselves too. And that involves a lot of our self-image, you know, particularly our negative self-image. I'm incapable of doing that, I'm incapable of doing this, something's wrong with me, you know, I'm worse than everybody else. If everybody else only knew what I'm really like inside, they wouldn't let me in the room, let alone look me in the eye. And we all have that mind too, don't we? Yeah. The, like, I'm the biggest loser in town mind. Yeah. And that mind keeps us so stuck. Keeps us so stuck. Yeah. As if we're in a competition to be, you know, the biggest loser. Because we feel like, you know, nobody else is as bad as me. I'm really the worst one. And so that whole way that we often think of ourselves and get stuck in getting so down on ourselves is really a hindrance, because it's a totally unrealistic state of mind. Yeah, we've all made mistakes. Or am I just telling my secrets again? Yeah, we've all made mistakes, haven't we? Yeah. We all have some good qualities, and we all have really blown it sometimes. Yeah, so we're no better and no worse than anybody else. Yeah, but creating this image that I am, you know, puts undue emphasis on the self, which really is not very realistic. Yeah. So it's important, you know, we all see our mistakes, we see our non-virtues, and then we purify them. They say that's the one good quality of all of our negative karma, is that it's able to be purified. Yeah? So everything's able to be purified. And there's the 4 opponent powers for how you purify it. So we get busy and we do those 4 opponent powers, and we really transform our mind and purify the negativities. And then, you know, let go of this self-image which keeps us so bound. You know, because when we're so down on ourselves, how can we open our hearts to appreciate others? We can't, because we're too busy thinking about me. Do you see what I'm getting at? Yeah? We're too busy thinking about me to be able to open our hearts and connect with others. Yeah. And then, of course, we feel shut in and shut out and unloved. But that is just another product of the way the self-centered mind, pulls us away from others. Yeah? And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay? So I think we need to have some kindness and forgiveness towards ourselves now, and ease up on that self-critical mind so that we can really have the space to see and experience our connection with other living beings. Because we are connected, aren't we? The scriptures say that we've all been each other's parents in previous lives. That's a pretty close relationship. Yeah, just think, everybody else in this room has wiped my poo. And they loved it when they did that. Because mothers love their babies, don't they? And fathers love their babies. You have a new baby, you wipe his poo all the time. Yeah, you love it. So, so that's the situation with all of us. We don't need to hide away from each other or feel so unrelated. Because we're very related, and others have been kind to us in that way, And we've wiped their poo as well. Yeah. So, yeah. So it brings us a sense of closeness, doesn't it? I don't need to worry so much about how people think about me. Yeah. So I think that's important to really open up in that way and see our interrelationship and see the kindness that others have shown us, and appreciate that. And then naturally, kind of the wish to repay that comes. And that wish to repay it is a joyful mind. It's not a mind of obligation. It's not, all these sentient beings have been so kind to me. I guess I better be nice back. It's not like that, okay? But just kind of naturally, when, people are nice to us, we respond and we want to be kind back. Just like that. We don't need to do any big thing about it, We don't need to make it into an obligation or a burden or some big deal. But it's, it's like somebody's kind, you're kind back. Yeah, it happens all the time, doesn't it? So we just need to let it keep happening, and let it increase. Okay, so we've been talking about the paths and grounds, and a lot of you EMLers haven't heard the beginning part of the text, so the next part is not going to make a whole lot of sense without the beginning part. What I'm going to do is, because I have to meet the needs of many people in one talk, is talk a little bit about, we've been studying about the hearers and solitary realizers, the beings who want to attain nirvana for their own personal sake, for their own personal peace. Okay, so we often speak of hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas. The hearers and solitary realizers want to attain nirvana for their own peace. The bodhisattvas want to become fully enlightened Buddhas for the benefit of all beings. So to become a hearer or a solitary realizer, you have to have the motivation of renunciation from samsara and the wish to attain liberation. And that's the same motivation that you need to have to some extent, greater or lesser, in order to take monastic vows. So it fits in with our EML discussion about monastic life. So a few weeks ago, I talked about the 3 kinds of dukkha, or suffering, and how people meditate on that in order to generate renunciation. And whether you're following here, solitary realizer, or bodhisattva vehicle, you want to generate that renunciation and determination to be free. And so today I thought I'd talk a little bit more about that motivation before we go back to studying the stages in the hearer vehicle. And so Asanga, one of the great Indian sages, who mostly wrote about the Mahayana, but he also wrote a very important text called the Hearer's Grounds, or Shravaka Bhumi. And it describes the path that the hearers take and what they meditate on, how they practice. And of course, people practicing the bodhisattva path should practice these meditations as well. So he was talking about a way in which you combine the 4 aspects of the 4 Noble Truths. Remember, impermanence, suffering nature, or dukkha in nature, emptiness and selflessness. You know, the way he combined that with the way we meditate on dukkha, or suffering, in the Lam Rim, and kind of put it all together. And it also relates to the 3 characteristics. You hear very often our Theravada friends, when we talk to them, they talk about the 3 characteristics: impermanence, suffering nature, dukkha, and then selflessness. So these are 3 of the 4 characteristics, the 4 Noble Truths. We add in emptiness as well, but there's no contradiction with any of them. So how to meditate on these 3 characteristics to produce the determination to be free and the renunciation from samsara, okay? Which is the motivation we need when we take monastic precepts. Okay, so Asanga taught 10 points, let me see. Yes, he taught 10 points about this meditation. The first 5 points have to do with meditating on impermanence. Then 3 points have to do with meditating on dukkha, or suffering, unsatisfactory nature. And then the last 2 points have to deal with selfless, or no self, however you want to translate it. And you always start with impermanence because it's a very powerful thing, you know. Impermanence is the fabric of our life, and we're so often completely spaced out about it. And when we really have an awareness of impermanence strongly in our mind, then the unsatisfactory nature, the dukkha nature of cyclic existence, becomes very clear, as does the selfless nature. Okay? So we're going to start off talking about impermanence. So I was saying there's 5 points under this. So he first talks about the impermanence of change. So this is what we call coarse impermanence, gross impermanence. The fact that the change that we can, and we and everybody else, can observe, and that we do observe in our life. Okay? The plate falls on the floor and breaks. Okay? The house falls down. A person dies. You know? The tree falls down. You know, the knapweed grows. All these, you know, there's just change all the time, very gross change. Yeah. So we spend some time reflecting on this gross change that of the objects of our 6 senses. You know, that the objects we see all around us have this gross change, you know. Each one of us is going to die. This house is going to fall down. Yeah, even our planet is not going to last forever. You know, there's some time when planet Earth is not going to exist. It's not eternal, is it? It's not permanent in the sense of being eternal. The things we hear are impermanent. Sometimes it's easier to think of the impermanence of sounds than it is of things that we see, because it's so clear. Somebody says some nice words to you and it's over very, very quickly. Isn't it? Gross impermanence, come, go, go. Smells, the things we smell, you know. The smells are there and then they're gone. The tastes. Yeah, we taste a meal, the meal's gone. Yeah, gross impermanence. The things that we touch. Yeah, it's hot in the daytime, cool in the evenings. We can sense this gross change in, you know, the tactile sensation of the temperature. You know, the things we think about. There's changes in our health, there's changes in our social status, there's changes in our appearance and our physical abilities. Yeah, so these are all kinds of coarse changes that that we can notice. Okay, and so and also not just the external objects, but internal objects like our happiness and our suffering. They come and go quite quickly. Yeah, you wake up in one mood in the morning, and you know, by the end of the meditation session, you're in a different mood. Changes. Yeah, you're happy 1 minute, then you're unhappy the next. You're unhappy 1 minute, then you're happy the next. So, you know, our feelings are changing all the time. And so really thinking about this and making many, many, many examples of it in our life, of just the fleeting nature of the things that we like and the things we rely on. And when we meditate deeply on this, we really get a sense that, you know, cyclic existence, this world controlled by afflictions and karma, is not very reliable. Yeah, that things come and go, and we don't have so much control over it, do we? Yeah, our bodies age. Do we have any control over that process? None. Doesn't matter how many facelifts you have. Your age on your passport still goes up. Okay? The age of you know, your whole health, it still goes up. Yeah? So really thinking about this very changeable nature, and also like relationships. You know, we're very close to somebody and then we don't even see them. Yeah? Remember the first person you fell in love with? Yeah? Do you even know that person now? Any of you know the first person you fell in love with? Yeah? Most of the time, you know, they're kind of gone. And yet at the time, you know, they were like the best thing since sliced bread. And now we don't even know them. Okay? So, you know, all these relationships changing. You know, everything in our life changing all the time. So really contemplating that gives us a feeling like, you know, samsara is not a place where there's going to be security. Because everything's changing and that's its nature. Yeah? I can't control it. And just imagine a world where everything were frozen, where everything were completely, didn't change at all, which would mean that we couldn't even move. Could we? Because movement is change. We would all be like that, you know. And what kind of pleasure is that? I want to freeze my happiest moment in my life. You freeze it, you know, and where are you? You're stuck. like that forever, you know. That doesn't sound so good, does it? Okay? You know, if you're stuck in it forever, then you can't even enjoy it, because enjoyment means that things have changed. Yeah? Okay, so that's the first contemplation on meditation, on impermanence, the impermanence of change, the gross change. The second one is called the impermanence of perishability. And this is a contemplation that leads us to an inference, so to a valid, to a reliable cognizer that knows subtle impermanence. And here what we contemplate is that the gross changes we see could not come about without imperceptible moment-by-moment changes. Okay? So, you know, we're a baby, and then we're an adult, and then we're a decrepit old person. Yeah. We always, well, we joke, but it's not a joke, about making sure we build enough rooms at the Abbey for the decrepit old nuns. You know, we're all kind of have our future envisioned. Yeah, I mean, the other alternative to becoming a decrepit old nun is you die first. So, you know, optimistic is becoming a decrepit old nun. But we can be joyful decrepit old nuns. There's nothing evil or sinful or bad in becoming a decrepit old nun, you know. If you're a joyful one with a meaningful life, then you're better off than most people in the world, even than all the beauty queens. Yeah? Wouldn't you rather be a decrepit old nun than a beauty queen? Or a decrepit old monk rather than, you know, Rambo? Okay. You know, the images society presents to us of what we should be are really too much, aren't they? You know? Rambo for the guys and Marilyn Monroe for the women, and it's all such junk, isn't it? Anyway, okay, so that the course change couldn't happen without the momentary one. So we don't go from being an infant to being 35 in one day, you know. And in one day we don't, you know, we age in each moment. You know, things are never frozen for a moment. The moment something is arising is the same moment in which it is going out of existence. It's not that things arise, then they're permanent and endure for a moment, and then they go out of existence. Okay? It's not that they arise, they stay stable, and then some cause from the outside comes and makes them change in the next moment. No, neither of these things. The very fact that something arises from a cause and conditions means that it is transient in its very nature and does not endure for a second moment. Yeah. Because the causal energy is like the smallest nanosecond, and so the result of that causal energy is also the smallest nanosecond, and then something new is there the very next moment. And it's only because you have this imperceptible momentary change that we have the gross change of aging. Yeah, because we don't go from being an infant to being an adult suddenly. It's imperceptible changes, and with each moment arising and ceasing in the same moment without any other necessary cause to make it cease. Okay? So everything we have is in the process of ceasing. Everything we are is in the process of ceasing, moment by moment. It's not always a gross change. We say, oh, I'm the same as I was this morning. But think about it, are you? Are you the same person that you were this morning? You're not. I mean, we had a Dharma talk, we had a discussion, you did offering service. Haven't those experiences changed you? Aren't you a different person now than you were this morning? Yeah. So each split second from the morning until now, yeah, each moment of who we are is arising and ceasing, and that allows the change from the morning until the evening to occur. Okay? So we always think we remain the same, but we don't, do we? Yeah? Not even for one split second does anything in our world remain the same. Okay? So our mind, likewise, is changing moment by moment. When you sit down to meditate, you can see that, can't you? The mind is bouncing around from one thing to the next. I mean, like this. So you can see the changing, okay? So there's a quote here from Chandrakirti that says, just as consciousness is momentary, all other conditioned things have the same momentary nature as the mind, because nothing obstructs the perishing of all conditioned things as soon as they appear, and because the impermanence of things depends only upon their arising. So there's nothing to stop things from changing in the next moment, and their transient nature relies only on the fact that they came into being. Okay? So, you know, if you're in the medical field, you're used to, you know, saying, well, what was the cause of death? You know, well, it was pneumonia, it was cancer, it was this, it was that. From a Buddhist viewpoint, what is the cause of death? Birth. It's a reality, isn't it? Isn't it? As soon as we're born, death is in the program. Yeah? Nothing to be surprised at. It's just there. Okay? Now, death is a very gross kind of impermanence, but it comes about because between birth and death, there's momentary impermanence. There's this impermanence of perishability. In each moment, the changing nature. Okay? So we want to really contemplate that. And that really accentuates the fact that there's no stability and no security in cyclic existence. Yeah. It's like sometimes when we're building these buildings now and making the Abbey grow, and I'll think about, oh, you know, we're building Chenrezig Hall, and it's not going to last forever. You know, what we're building is going to be destroyed. Yeah, I think it's more realistic to have that view. Yeah, we're building all this. We're building something that's going to be destroyed. That doesn't mean we don't build it, because however long it lasts, it will be useful. But it does mean that if we're going to spend the energy and time building it, we better have a good motivation. Because at the end of the day, the building doesn't last, but it's our motivation that brings results, you know, in terms of what we experience in future lives. So everything's changing, you know. Our motivation's changing. The karmic seeds on our mind stream are changing. All these things are changing. So we should try and make them virtuous as much as we can. You know, because the physical things we're creating, you know, going, gone, aren't they? Uh-huh.
Could you repeat the quote from Chandrakirti?
Sure. Just as consciousness is momentary, all other conditioned things have the same momentary nature as the mind. because nothing obstructs the perishing of all conditioned things as soon as they appear, and because the impermanence of things depends only upon their arising. Okay, that's what Chandrakirti said. Of course, Chandrakirti lived 4 centuries after Asanga, so that quote wasn't in Asanga's text, but it certainly applies here. I'm sorry, he lived 3 centuries after Asanga. Okay, then the third one of impermanence is the impermanence of separation. So here we reflect on the changeability of our personal situation, okay, that we're healthy and then we fall ill. Yeah, we're separated from our good health. We may have great freedom at one point in our life and then fall under the control of others at other points in our life. Yeah. We may have a very close relationship with somebody at one point in our life and be totally out of touch with them at another point in our life. Yeah. So we may have happiness at one point and, not at another point. So the impermanence of separation is, again, about the unreliability of samsara and how we may have something and then have the opposite in the blink of an eye. Yeah. There's one of our neighbors, when we first moved to the Abbey, was in his early 70s. He was in incredibly good health. In fact, his doctor told him, gee, I wish I could have the good health that you have. And he was doing triathlons in his 70s. Okay. And now, just a few years later, he's been through heart surgery and has terminal cancer. So you can have good health in one moment and like this the next moment. Or you're healthy when you start out driving somewhere and then, you wind up in the hospital afterwards and unhealthy by the end of the day, injured by the end of the day. So we're constantly in this thing of being separated from the good things that we have. Okay, so that's the impermanence of separation. So the purpose of thinking about these things is not to get depressed. Okay? The Buddha did not need to give teachings for us to be depressed. We can make ourselves depressed without the Buddha's exerting any effort, can't we? Okay, so the purpose of these teachings is not to be depressed. The purpose is to wake up to the reality of the situation that we live in so that we get some energy to counteract the ignorance and afflictions and karma that keep us bound in this situation. Okay? So these meditations are very important for seeing the situation we're in so that we decide to do something about it. Okay? It's like somebody in prison. If, they want to get out because they keep thinking, I'm not free and somebody has control over me and I can't get this and I don't have that and it's unstable and insecure. Therefore, I want to escape. But as soon as if you get in prison and go, well, this kind of comfy place and 3 hots and a cot and it's not so bad and, then you just stay stuck in your cell. Spaced out in complacency. So, we're trying to get ourselves out of the prison of cyclic existence. And the way is to see its disadvantages. As long as we see cyclic existence as, zippity-doo-dah, then we don't want to get out. Yeah? And this is our problem, is that we tend to only want to get out of cyclic existence when we're miserable. But then some people get so miserable that they can't practice Dharma. Then when they're happy, then when we're happy, we don't want to get out of cyclic existence because we have, temporal pleasure. And anyway, the mind's too distracted when we're happy to practice. So, you know, it's kind of hard. That's why there's a monastic schedule. Because it doesn't matter whether you're happy or unhappy, you go into the hall. Yeah? Because if we only practice when we're unhappy, or we only practice when we're happy, then we're never going to do it, are we? Yeah? So, you know, seeing that samsara is the utmost of dysfunctional situations, then we try and get out of it. Okay? Okay, then the fourth kind of impermanence is called the impermanence of the dharmata, or the impermanence of things. Okay? The impermanence of the nature of things. Dharmata is your name, Chuni. Okay, so the impermanence of Chuni. You aren't your name. Okay, and here what we contemplate is that we may not be experiencing the impermanence of change, that was the gross impermanence, or the impermanence of separation, which is being separated from the good things that we like. Okay, we may not be experiencing those right now, but with a very slight change in the circumstances, wham, we are. Okay? So this is making us aware, you know, that we may have a neutral feeling right now, but slight change of circumstances and things can be very painful. Okay, so there's no security, there's no stability. Yeah? And so you see people who say, oh, I'm so happy everything's going well in my life. And I think that what's actually happening is they're standing right here, right on the edge of the cliff. You know? You're walking right on the edge of the cliff. And as long as you're up on the edge of the cliff, you think everything's fine. But the edge of a cliff is not a safe situation, because slightest little thing, and you're over the cliff. So in the same way, you know, we may say, oh, everything's great, but slightest little thing, and our whole world can go topsy-turvy, can't it? Yeah? I mean, people were saying how 9/11 was such a shock. And it was, you know, whoever imagined that happening? And such a, you know, one day, and the mood from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, everything changed. I mean, so many things changed. Yeah? So we're always just, you know, just kind of right there. Yeah? So there's nothing to kind of lie back and get complacent about in cyclic existence. Okay? Then the fifth one is called the impermanence of the present. And this is the impermanence of change. In other words, the fact that things are perishing and going out of existence in the present, right now, moment by moment by moment by moment. Okay? So the impermanence of the present. That the present does not remain until the next moment. I mean, the present, it's weird because the present is always there, but what's in the present is changing. That's one way to look at it. Another way is to say the present doesn't last. And, you know, and you're getting a new present, aren't you? Okay. So, doing reflections on impermanence helps us to see that every facet of our being, every facet of our life, every facet of our world is transitory and unstable. And so this leads us, this feeling of instability, leads us to feel uncomfortable about the prospect of remaining in cyclic existence. Yeah. And so, you know, it's feeding this awareness that, gee, I better do something, okay? And this sense of discomfort with cyclic existence is increased by meditating on the next 3 points, which all have to do with the unsatisfactory nature, okay? And so these are the 3 kinds of dukkha that we've talked about before, okay? So the dukkha of pain here is called the aspect of being undesirable, because nobody likes painful experiences, whether they're physical or mental. Okay, everybody sees that as pain. Okay, the second kind of unsatisfactory experience is the unsatisfactoriness, or the dukkha of change, and that's called the aspect of fetters and bondage, because when our body and mind experience pleasure, that leads us to have craving. And craving, remember we were talking about the different kinds of craving, the 3 different kinds of craving? Then craving, keeps us bound within cyclic existence, experiencing birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. That whole list comes repeatedly in the sutras, okay? So the dukkha of change is called the aspect of fetters and bondage. Dukkha of change means that is samsaric happiness, okay? Yeah, just whatever pleasure, mental or physical, we have in our life, that is unsatisfactory because it doesn't last very long. And it's actually a small type of suffering. Yeah. When you're hungry, you eat, but if you keep eating, it ceases to be happiness, and it's suffering, isn't it? So any pleasant experience we can think of, if you keep doing it, it becomes painful. Okay? But while it's still, the pain is small, then we call it pleasurable. And that pleasure, our mind gets attached to it, we crave it. Through craving, we stay taking one rebirth after another in cyclic existence. Okay? Sometimes people say, well, if samsara is that bad, why don't we just kill ourselves? Well, the problem is that suiciding doesn't stop the pain, because you get reborn. So, dismiss the idea of suicide because it doesn't solve the problem. In fact, it only makes it worse. So the only way out of the situation is through changing our mind, changing what's in here. It's the only way out. Yeah. But that's the good thing, because we're the one who can do something about what's inside of ourselves. Yeah. If our getting out of samsara depended on somebody else, then the situation would be very difficult. Because how are we going to convince that other being to liberate us? Yeah, but it doesn't depend on, an external being. It depends on what we're doing. Okay, and then the 8th point, okay, is the pervasive condition dukkha, which is the factor of our welfare not being secure.
That's the 3rd?
Yeah. Well, that's the 8th. It's the 3rd of the ones under unsatisfactoriness, but it's the 8th of the list of 10. Okay? So the pervasive condition dukkha is the fact that we may have a neutral experience now, but we have the seeds within us to experience the dukkha of pain and the dukkha of change. And with a slight change of circumstance, we will. Okay? So those 3 have to do with the second characteristic, unsatisfactory nature. Okay? Then the transition from impermanence to dukkha occurs by thinking all of these are permanent things arise or are born. And birth in cyclic existence is unsatisfactory, because it leads to aging, sickness, death, meeting with the disagreeable. separating from what we like and not getting what we want. Okay? So, impermanence, because it's, the very nature of our existence, it's what leads us to experience all these other unsatisfactory conditions, that arise due to causes. Okay? So, contemplating this unsatisfactory nature on the basis of understanding subtle impermanence really jolts us out of our complacency, because we understand the unsatisfactoriness of samsara at a much deeper level, and so our renunciation increases. Okay? And we really begin to mistrust afflictions and karma. Yeah, we really begin to say, oh, attachment is not my friend. Anger is not my protector. Yeah. Resentment is not my way to heal. Revenge is not what frees me from grief. Yeah. So it really makes us see that we have to change these internal psychological states, And we do that by realizing emptiness, which is the universal medicine for all the mental afflictions, and can uproot them all so that they never occur again. Okay? So then we move on to think about the selfless nature of things. So here, the first characteristic of selflessness, and which is the 9th in this list of 10, is called the aspect of unobservability. My spell checker went crazy with that word. Unobservability. Okay, so it means that we're not able to observe or discern a real self that exists, that is separate from the aggregates. So sometimes we learn different philosophies that says there's a soul that's separate from our mental physical aggregates, separate from our body and mind, there's a soul. But some said this kind of soul, or some kind of self with a capital S that is a different entity than our aggregates, it's unobservable because it doesn't exist. Okay? If such a soul existed, we should be able to find it. Yeah? You ever seen your soul? Is there something you can draw a line around and say, this is a permanent me? Yeah, because a soul is permanent. That remember, so that means you're frozen. Okay, that soul's frozen, it doesn't change. Is there such a thing that is you? Like that, that's frozen? I don't think so. Okay, so we may have all sorts of philosophies and psychologies that say there is. But as I always say, don't believe everything you think. Because just because we think that doesn't mean it exists. Yeah, when we check to find that kind of soul, can't find it anywhere.
Could it be what we call our Buddhahood?
Ah, okay, our Buddhahood, or maybe our Buddha nature.
Yeah.
Some people talk about Buddha nature as if it were a soul. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. Yeah. There's something in us that would really like to believe there was a soul. There's some comfort, superficially, but when you really think of what a soul is, I think I don't like the idea of believing in it anymore, But our Buddha nature is not like that. When we talk about Buddha nature, one aspect of our Buddha nature is permanent. That's the empty nature of our mind. Okay. The fact that, we can't find a self, that fact is permanent. That doesn't change. The other aspect of our Buddha nature, the evolutionary Buddha nature, is all the impermanent factors of who we are, that can be changed and developed and become aspects of a Buddha. Yeah? So like the clear and knowing nature of our mind, or the compassion that we have right now, the wisdom that we have right now, those are all aspects of our evolutionary Buddha nature. Okay, or transforming Buddha nature. Maybe that's a better way to translate it, transforming Buddha nature. But it's not a soul. But sometimes when you listen to people talk about Buddha nature, you can see that they're just kind of substituting it. Okay, I don't believe in a soul, but now Buddha nature takes its place. That doesn't mean we've really understood Buddha nature correctly. Okay? In fact, actually it means we've misunderstood Buddha nature. Okay, so what we call I, what we call mine, are mine, M-I-N-E. These are just figures of speech. Beyond there being the name I, there's nothing we can find. Beyond there being the word mine, there's nothing that we can find. Our body and mind are not owned or possessed by some overarching self that is holding it all together. Yeah? I mean, when you look at it, we feel like I'm here, right? Me, I'm here. And like I'm holding the body and mind together. Yeah? I got it all in control. I got the body and the mind stuck together. Stay alive. I'm in charge here. But when you start, so we feel that way. But when you start to examine what is this I, and you try and identify it, you can't come up with anything. Or when you feel, okay, what is the I that owns the body and mind? Body and mind, that mind, What's the I that owns all of this? Point to it. It's unobservable. We can't come up with it. Okay, and then the 10th aspect of self, and this is the second aspect of selfless, is the aspect of independence. The aspect of a lack of independence. Okay, refers to the aggregates not being under the control of a self. So, our body and mind are not under the control of this kind of self. First of all, there's no self like that. Second of all, the aggregates are not under the control of that kind of self. The aggregates are mere dependent arisings, which means that they arise due to their causes, and they cease because they arise. Okay, our aggregates, our body and mind, arise due to causes and cease, moment by moment by moment by moment. Yeah, the aggregates, our body and mind, do not need a self to keep them together and make things happen. Yeah, it's really funny because we say, I made a decision. And we feel like there's a me that made the decision, right? I made a decision. Yeah. And we feel very strong. Yeah, me, I made the decision. My body didn't make the decision. My mind didn't make the decision. My feelings didn't make it. My discrimination didn't make it. All these hodgepodge of different mental factors didn't make the decision. I made the decision. But when you look for the person who made the decision, you can't find something that you can draw a line around and say, that's the me that made the decision. When you ask yourself, well, how then did a decision get made? What you see is all sorts of different mental factors all working together. All sorts of different states, different mental events or physical events, all sorts of different things working together. And at the end, magic, there's a decision. But you can't find one thing that made it. You can't find one independent thing that was the exact thing that made the decision without any relation, one thing that has no relationship to anything else. And yet it's so strange because our feeling is that there's a real me who makes a decision. And so there's a real me who gets very confused about what decision to make. Yeah? But that me is just something that exists by being labeled. Okay? Okay, so meditating on these 10 points, which are kind of dissecting the 3 characteristics or dissecting the 4 aspects of the 4 noble truths, of the first noble truth, amplifying those first 4 aspects. When you really meditate on this, then a strong feeling arises of, I want out of cyclic existence. I can do better than this. Yeah, there's a kind of happiness that is better than the cheap happiness of samsara that doesn't last. And I want that kind of happiness. And so that's what you meditate on, to enter the here path of accumulation. If you're following the bodhisattva vehicle, once you get to this feeling of, I want to get out, then you look around at everybody else and say, everybody else is in the same exact situation. I want everybody to get out. And I need to do something to facilitate their getting out. Okay, and so you generate the bodhicitta. Okay, we didn't get to the part on the text about all the different stages, so we'll do that next week. Yeah, but I think this gives you something to think about. Okay, we're a little bit over time, but if there's time for maybe 1, maybe 2 questions, something. Yeah.
Several, but let's start with this one. When you have realization of impermanence, is that something that is like a constant awareness in the mind of subtle impermanence, or is it something, again, where you have to be in meditation to really have that awareness, and that then influences you when you come out of your meditative state?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, that you have direct perception of impermanence in your meditation. And when you come out of your meditation, your meditation is influenced so that you're quite aware of the impermanent nature of things, as you're moving through the day. But you may not be single-pointed on impermanence at that particular moment as you're moving through the day.
Question from last week. I have a hard time putting together these 2 ideas. One was that, which made a lot of sense, like that it seemed like there was a depth of penetration of the understanding of emptiness that related to kind of shedding away how concrete, the reifying of things, the grasping through existence. I can't really put that in the washing of the stains from the cloth. That all works.
Okay.
I can't put that together with this idea that when you realize emptiness, you've realized the emptiness of the self and all phenomena. Like in that moment, those 2 thoughts don't seem like they jive at all.
Okay, so you're wondering how the 2 thoughts jive. One thought is realizing, having direct perception of all phenomena.
Yeah, when you realize emptiness.
Having direct perception of the emptiness of all phenomena.
Why isn't it just taking care of everything when you see that?
Okay.
Washing this cloth.
Okay, so when you see the emptiness of all phenomena, why doesn't it eliminate all the afflictions at once, all together?
Yeah,
Zoom.
How could you have that experience of seeing the emptiness of all phenomena and then even have to go through this process?
Okay.
The 2 ideas.
Yeah, when you have the direct realization of the emptiness of all phenomena, the mind at that point does not have any manifest afflictions in it. It's a very, very pure mind. But the thing is, we have been habituated with affliction since beginningless time. Yeah, and so, you know, one meditation session on emptiness is not going to get rid of this incredible habituation we have of holding things as truly existent. You know, that grasping at true existence has to be eliminated slowly, slowly, little by little. You know, because when you come out of your meditation, you know, you still have the seeds of the grasping at true existence, and so the appearance of true existence is there for you.
So then what does it really mean, the depth of penetration seems to relate to
Because
the
it,
subtleness of what you're grasping at?
yeah, well, the afflictions, the different level of afflictions that you eliminate, first on path of seeing, then on path of meditation, all are the strength in which we assent to the appearance, are based on the strength of which we assent to the appearance of true existence. Okay? So if they are more and more subtle based on the strength with which we assent, then our understanding of emptiness we still realize the same emptiness, but the realization is stronger and more powerful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what I meant when I said deeper, yeah?
But that other little thing, it kind of doesn't...
Yeah, it seems like it should all just go away at once.
I mean, it makes no sense to me the way you're stating it in terms of the washing of the cloth, because
Yeah.
everything else in our experience is like that.
Right.
There are things you know that are simple, like 2 and 2 is 4, but yeah, you might be able to remember that one, but you can't remember the other ones. You have to do these things repeatedly to
Yes.
remember things, and so many things are like that.
Yes,
So that makes sense.
yes,
The only way I can think of it is like, if that was all pixels, like, okay, I can see that whole picture, but I don't see all the pixels. I have to go study every one, you know. I don't know how to, it's hard to hold that
yeah.
idea.
No, it's just a thing of, you know, more familiarity, more depth, wearing away at the strength of the wrong grasping. Okay?
I still don't know how to approach this meditation on point 5, the impermanence of the present.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just don't know how to go there with my mind.
How do you
The
go?
rising and ceasing in the same moment.
Yes, it's when you really sit there, you know, then you begin to see how past, present, and future are conceptually constructed. Yeah, because we're sitting there. I'm going to meditate on the present. Where is the present? Yeah? Where is the present? You know, I want to grab onto the present because this is going to be my object of single-pointed concentration. But where is it? You know, it's somewhere between the past and the future. But you can't actually find the past and you can't find the future, because the past is what's arisen and ceased, and the future hasn't arisen yet. So somewhere between that we find the present. But you can't see the past and you can't see the future. You're only in the present. But you can't isolate it and freeze it to look at it. It feels weird, doesn't it? Yeah, because we think past, present, future. Present is somehow frozen. Present isn't just a split second, but present is frozen, and it lasts for a while. But it doesn't last for a while. Yeah? We think, oh, today is present. But actually, part of today is gone. Part of today hasn't happened yet.
This kind of works a little bit with what Venerable Prabhupada was talking about. It has to do, if you could touch on the realization of impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm struggling with it a little bit because it seems like for the purpose of this, one is realizing impermanence as on a conceptual basis, to help cultivate renunciation. But it would seem like if one really had a sustained realization of impermanence, wouldn't that be synonymous with the realization of emptiness? In that when you really recognize the impermanence of phenomenon, there's no grasping, no craving, but you see it as momentarily changing. All of the qualities that would seem to be also aligned with a realization of emptiness, are they the same thing?
Okay, so it's a realization of impermanence, the same as the realization of selflessness, because it would seem when you're always focused on impermanence, that then selflessness would be a given. From the viewpoint of the lower tenant schools, yeah, you get, if you realize impermanence, you also realize dukkha, you also realize selfless. Okay? From the viewpoint of the prasangika, they would say that no, you have to cultivate each realization. You know, they influence each other, they benefit each other, but still to have a full realization of emptiness, yeah, you would have to realize more than just impermanence. I mean, I had the same question when I started out, because it seemed to me that if you see that if you really realize impermanence, then you know that there's no thing you can grasp that goes from one moment to the next. You know, there's no essence or nature that's there that you can grasp from one moment to the next. Yeah, but it seems like that would, wow, certainly lead you in the direction of realizing emptiness. But, you know, understanding that things exist only nominally, that level of dependent arising, yeah, that one you still have to get.
Yeah, so maybe the grasping isn't there, but you still haven't identified the components of the arisal in terms of causes and conditions.
Well, no, you've identified impermanence in terms of causes and conditions, okay? But it's not, and you've identified emptiness in terms of the being dependent on causes and conditions. But you haven't identified emptiness as things being dependent in the sense of being merely labeled.
The label, the imputation.
Yeah. Okay, let's dedicate.
71. May the
Spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual masters be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Dosan's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Guru Ratna Mandala Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon awaiting the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig, may you stay until samsara ends. May the deeds of explaining and practicing the Dharma, done by groups supporting the teachings and their upholders, who spread the view of dependent arising and nonviolent actions in the 10 directions, and especially at Sravasti Abbey in the West Florida.